projector, which means that we're going to get started. Good morning and welcome to 1 Million Cups. The first thing we do every week is identify who is here for the first time. And raise your hand. Who hasn't been here in a while, Mr. Handy? Welcome back to those of you guys who have been here for a while. For those of you who are here for the first time, we welcome you to 1 Million Cups. Who here would consider themselves an entrepreneur? Yes, that's what we like to see. So every Wednesday morning, we do the exact same program. Two young and scalable entrepreneurs are going to get up here and present. No, okay, all right. Young in spirit are going to present their company for 6 to 8 minutes, followed by 20 minutes of question and answer. During the question and answer session, you can just raise your hand, and myself and I think Philip today are going to be running the microphones, and we will bring you the microphone if you wouldn't mind standing and asking a question and putting your cell phone on silent. Thank you very much for the quality of the recording, which you can find on our YouTube channel. So if ever you miss a week's presentation, just a few days later, courtesy of Beyond Creative, they upload all of the videos to our YouTube channel, and you can check them out there. But without further ado, we'll get the program started with a presenter who's here for the first time, Nathan Malarico with the Missouri Film Alliance.
And all around the country. I work under the name of Unknown Films. I've worked on shows like Clash of the Ozarks, Dance Moms, Extreme Couponing, and a whole list of other ones. But I'm also the vice president of the Missouri Film Alliance, which is an organization that promotes and celebrates motion media. And I want to make you guys aware of how big the Missouri Film Alliance really takes on in the projects that they deal with. So did you guys know that just in Missouri, 3 different films, Gone Girl, Winter's Bone, and Up in the Air, they spent $20 million just in Missouri on things like hotels, rentals, and local payroll, food, things like that. But none of those big productions are coming back to Missouri because the legislation, the tax incentive for film productions has disappeared. It's gone. It wasn't approved, so it's not here anymore. So those big productions with all their money are moving on to other states. So let me tell you how the Film Alliance tries to promote big productions like that, and small productions too, to come to Missouri. There's a little history about us. We've been here for 10 years, and we're an arm of the Springfield Regional Arts Council. So we're a 501c3, totally nonprofit. It was created out of a need for filmmakers to connect with each other. And also there needed to be a directory of talent. All these people that are talented in craft and also talented as actors and actresses, they needed a place and a one-stop shop to kind of meet each other and work on each other's projects. We partner with other film organizations, MoMA, based out of St. Louis, and the Missouri Film Office, which there's really not much of left after the budget cuts. And just recently we had new invigorated leadership take place, and so we have a new board as of 2015. So we meet every second Tuesday of the month at the Creamery Arts Center, which is here downtown at 6:30. There's about 15 to 20 people that regularly show up, and we have different events each month, and so we have lots of different types of things going on, like special guests, just similar to what you guys are doing here. We have people come and talk about their craft. They bring different equipment for people to see. They present their talents and show their movies or whatever they have going on. We just want to hear about it. We also promote education about film. For example, we're going to be working with database systems on how to get kids into motion media and teach them how to use the programs and applications it takes to make their creative projects. We are big on networking. Everything we do focuses around networking and getting all those filmmakers and enthusiasts together to meet each other. We hold special events, especially with other community organizations like Aceto 48. The Film Challenge is here in Springfield that brings hundreds of filmmakers here, and they produce movies, and we have a mixer event that gets them all together to get people on teams and helps them in any way that they need, really. We also are definitely focused on jobs. You can see me, that's me working on Clash of the Ozarks. And we are working on developing different ways to not only get all those big projects here and small projects, but get people working on those too, so that we have job creation. And then we also provide resources at a very low cost to anybody who may not have them. Some new filmmakers may not have access to a big high-powered computer or cameras or all the hundreds of different types of equipment that you might need. We have this computer is an actual photo of our editing bay, and then these are just different kinds of gear that we have where the filmmakers can rent with their membership. And membership only costs, to rent all this stuff is $100 a year. So it's super cheap. We're not trying to make a profit. We're just trying to get people to have this equipment in their hands and be able to use it when they need to for whatever projects they have. Some of our plans for the future, of course, are to grow that membership. And we have a huge new website that we're building that concentrates on a job board and a whole networking platform so that people with movies and other projects can post what positions they may need or what cast and crew they need, and you can go and quickly apply to that. We definitely want to keep promoting that film incentive legislation. It didn't pass last time, mainly because of the Senate. And again, where we need a lot of help is figuring out how to set up, get grants started and find different avenues for money making. We just don't have a lot of talent in that regard on our board or within our membership base. So kind of the things that I would love to hear back from you or get feedback and ideas from is, one, avenues for revenue, and two, building the film culture in Springfield and the whole state, because building the film culture here benefits everybody. Creativity is good for everyone, whether you're a business owner or a filmmaker yourself. Having good, creative, innovative ideas is good all around. So thank you, and let me know if you have any questions.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your activities are with the state to put the legislation back in place for your film incentives?
Yeah, so we work largely with MoMo, which is the Missouri Motion Media Association. They have actually hired a lobbyist that works every year since that tax incentive is gone. They have had lobbyists in there, and they found someone in legislation to promote that bill. I think last time it was under the name SWAN. It's House Bill 803. But the problem is that no one in the Senate will support it at all. So every time it dies, they cut it because the governor cut it because of budget restrictions that he was trying to stay in, and also he just didn't see it as an important aspect of what needed to be done in Missouri. So he was pretty blunt about that. So.
You do a lot of gear rental, right? For the
Right.
premium membership, $100 a year,
Yeah.
which is really, really cheap, a good rate for a lot of people. Do you just lend it out to like photographers as well as somebody who may not be in video, but somebody that just does photography?
Yeah, we rent it out to anybody who wants to sign up as a member. Yeah, the sky's the limit. There's really nobody that we're not gonna rent to.
What are other states doing, as a follow-up question to what our state is doing, what the government's doing? What are other neighboring states doing that help their film industries?
That's a great question. So Missouri is one of only 10 states that does not support a tax incentive. And the other states that don't support it are almost all bordering Missouri. But states that do support film actually benefit from it quite a lot. And I'm not just talking about New York and California, the obvious ones. Close by to us is Georgia. How many times have you watched, and at the end of a movie you see that Georgia peach? Those are big productions going and filming there because they get a tax incentive. It's simple. There's just so much money on these movies that are spent. Like I said, Up in the Air with George Clooney, that was $12 million that was just spent in Missouri. The money stayed here and didn't go anywhere else. And they actually wanted to make another movie with the same cast, and they decided to go somewhere else solely because of the tax incentive.
Excuse me. How you doing?
Hi.
You know, we were talking before. I'm
Yeah.
a film director. I'm going to make a movie here called Magic Soccer. And I've been working on this screenplay I wrote about. I've been making movies for over 35 years in my country, Venezuela. But I consider myself an American filmmaker because I went to school here. I lived in California most of my life. So 2 years ago, when we had this legislation, I talked to Jerry Jones, who was in charge of that.
Yeah.
And he told me that, you know, in Missouri, if you want to make a movie, you get 35% in tax credits. So, okay, that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, Up in the Air came and they spent $20 million, and they got back $5 million from Missouri. So that helps a lot. Is, you know, 35% helps a lot, because when you finish a movie, you got post-production, and it's so expensive. You know, you shoot in video, and then you have to transfer. Only the transfer is $35,000.
Yeah.
And then everything, you know, is so expensive. Advertising. We are, when we make a movie here in Springfield, or any place in the world besides Hollywood, we are competing with them. We're competing with this big machine.
Right.
That you know, we are independent productions. So it's very deep. We're fighting with everything. We're fighting with them too. So Winterbone came here 2 years ago, or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It was $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
And they spent here in Missouri
Right.
$100,000. So the producer of the movie was going to be my producer at that time.
Yeah.
She's Sarah Kissinger.
Right.
She's working here still.
Yeah, she's a member.
So I've been fighting to make this movie. The only thing we need, you know, is I'm gonna use the talent from here, actors, actresses. You know, look at Jennifer Lawrence. She came here. She was nobody. I went to the premiere. I met her. She was just a, you know, young girl. Now look at who she is. That's how we make people. We, as a producer, director. When I made my first movie in Venezuela, the actor became one of the biggest actors in South America. And he just came to my office one day. I looked at him. He was perfect for the part. I gave it to him. That's the way we make people. There's so much talent here. So much talent. You're amazing. So we just need the help. I'm going to put my project in Kickstarter in 1 week, 2 weeks, and then I'm going to need the help from everybody to get the money so I can make a movie in Springfield, bring money here, and continue. I got other screenplays, and you know, we can make an industry here. It's not just making one movie.
Right, and we want to promote that.
Exactly.
We want to get you
So
on
that's
our
what we're going
Facebook,
to do
on our
here.
email blast.
You know, I'm sorry, I came here because I wanted to meet
No,
you guys.
it's a
and
great
I'm
story.
sure
I hope
we're
we
going
can
to
even
continue.
continue to
Oh yeah,
talk
for
later,
sure.
yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I.
So elaborate on like the call to action. If launch it with your very inspiring story. If everybody wanted to take some action and put their signature on somewhere, is there a place that they can do that?
Again, what we really need is help and advice and experience on how to fill out grants and different fundraising ideas, anything that's going to bring money into us so that we can continue to be sustainable. That's number one, and then actually that's number two. Number one is supporting film, whether you are in it or not. Support film. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of filmmakers just in Springfield. Within State of 48, there was 500 people that showed up to their award ceremony at that film challenge. So there are literally hundreds of people making films, whether you know it or not, all around you. So please just support that, so that when it comes and when the time comes, you'll know that in the background there's film happening all around you.
Other than the financial problems, what are some other things that are keeping these big productions out of Missouri, like maybe talent, filming locations, and how is your organization fighting to overcome those barriers?
We're trying to show them that there isn't any reason that they shouldn't be here. We have great landscapes. We have cityscapes that also look good. We have small towns. We have very small towns, and we also have big towns. So there's really, and we have talent. There's so much talent here. You know, my personal experience is I was born in Los Angeles. I worked in New York, but I still kept my home in Springfield because there was so much work, but it was everywhere else. But I knew that I wanted to be in Springfield because it's a great place here. So that's part of why the reason I got involved with the Film Alliance was in order to bring some of that work back here. But there's really nothing that's preventing it other than money. And of course, people's particular scripts might have something to do with it. But we're trying to put together packages that show people that there's nothing stopping them from making a movie here.
I have a question. Sorry about that. I have a question about, to what degree, if any, are you reaching out to the educational community here in Springfield? Almost every university, high school, junior high, has very good video equipment, and they're making not only documentaries, but feature film, music videos, and things like that. Would your organization, should they try to form an alliance with the educational community here?
We are starting that a little bit this year, actually. For a while, I went to OTC, so I have some good connections there. So we're talking to people like John Spear and Dana over there. And we're going to try to get those, maybe come in and speak like we are now, and get those kids involved so that they know whenever they have projects or things that go past school, they can come and we'll help support it in whatever way they need, whether it's just getting feedback about their movies or helping them with a Kickstarter campaign. So that's definitely a project we want to take even further than what we're doing right now. We have so many projects going on just this 1 year. So.
Hi, I'm Deb Wilson with the Ozark Systemic Coalition, and how have you ever been involved with the Maker Fair and things like that that would help promote what you're doing?
I have not. Tell me about it.
Well, it's kind of like a science fair meets county fair on steroids.
Okay.
And it really is an eclectic group of people that are all into 3D printers, 3D printer pens, CNC machines, robotics, and then anything in our high-tech businesses. What are the hobbyists doing with those equipments, and what are the school-age children, preschool through postgraduate school, doing with that? But I can see this would be a perfect avenue to get your information out to masses, because we're expecting thousands and thousands of people attending this on Saturday, August the 29th.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later.
If anyone has a community announcement, you're more than welcome to put it on our community announcement whiteboard.
Kind of going back to my thought with what other states are doing, are any other states or other groups looking at other ways to help get the film and the arts going without going to the taxpayers or the government for various tax incentives and stuff like that? Maybe working with non-governmental organizations or businesses. Do you know of any other ways that these organizations, this need is being fed?
I know it is somewhat. It's not actually the specific department that I'm handling within the Film Alliance. And the Missouri Motion Media Association, they're largely the ones who are coming up with the data and everything that you're talking about there. So I could probably do a whole nother presentation on all of the facts that they found out, but I don't have that stuff with me now. But I know that they are working with it. I know they're trying to find out what those states are doing specifically, and then building that into packages that Missouri can offer too. But I apologize, I don't know the specifics right now.
Nathan, with our last few minutes here, I'd like you to go back to your vision to reality slide.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and address the question up front, how can we as a community help you? And it looks like you need a lot of things. If you were to prioritize those or put those in order from what you need right now to how that goes into the future, and you can convey that vision to us, how can we as a community help you with your immediate needs list?
Okay, so the immediate things that we need right now are donations and grants. And we want to find out about more specific community events, which I just heard about. And then definitely building the film culture so that a film incentive legislation makes sense whenever it's promoted or whenever it's presented to local Congress. And Yeah, we need that culture. We need the state to understand that film is important. So when it is shown to politicians, they definitely see it as something that's necessary rather than something that just gets cut out. So that's just a mindset, really, is what we really need. That mindset will grow, and everything else will kind of come with it.
And hey, Nathan, looking at the top one there, new membership,
Yeah.
can you said $25 a year for
Right.
anybody who's thinking about
Yeah.
joining, and then $100 and you get access for the whole year to the editing bay?
Yes.
Can you
yeah.
elaborate on membership? Is there any other criteria other than just the dues?
No, there's not. It's so simple. You can be an enthusiast. You can be a filmmaker. You can come to these meetings for $25 a year. If you want to start using equipment, then you can use the editing bay at the $100 a level or $100 a year level, and then we rent out things like cameras and lights, and these are like professional equipment, and we're renting it out for super cheap, like $20 a day for a camera, just so that we can make the money back and keep providing equipment like that. But no, there's no other criteria.
Do you have any training that goes with the rental of the equipment?
We are actually working on developing that project also again this year. Yes, we want to find members or anybody even here who knows how to use that equipment and actually has some time to sit down, like in our editing bay or in the creamery room that we use, and train people. Maybe build classes soon too.
Have you considered having training classes as a means of raising revenue on your equipment?
We've talked a little bit with database systems about that, and we're going to start it out with the younger crowd, and then see how that goes, and probably develop that into an older crowd too. Just this week, I got 3 emails asking me if there was a junior high level training course on how to use Final Cut Pro, an editing platform. So there's definitely a need for it. We're just at the beginning stages of developing some way to get all that information to people.
So Nathan, with all of that said, go back to your slide of how people can get a hold of you.
Okay.
And if anybody has
Okay.
an opportunity to participate in the training sessions, or if you need anything, you know where to contact Nathan.
Yep.
And we
Right
thank
on
you
the
for
phone.
presenting today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, guys, a few announcements before we move on to our next presenter. I'm going to butcher the acronym again. I'm horrible at this. I don't know why I keep getting announcements. Small business, everybody. Okay, nobody. All right. How to start a business, though, that's self-explanatory. That's 4 to 6, June 24th. So, Rayanna, are you here? No? Okay. That's who to contact if you guys do have questions about that. She's usually here, so. Real Estate Investors Group, Brad, Sean. Let's see them here. Not here either. Okay. They have an event coming up June 18th. Idea Workshop, Chris and Jeremy. Are either one of you guys here? Yep. All right. If you guys have any questions about the Idea Workshop, make sure you guys talk with them afterwards. And then Google AdWords Workshop, which I know we could all use some fine-tuning with that. Cassie and Ashley, raise your hand. If you guys have questions about that, be sure to get in touch with them afterwards. All right, great questions, guys, on that last presentation, and really excited to introduce you to these next presenters. Really kind of exciting app that they're going to introduce you to. We have Dan and Chris to present to you Gracious.
Good morning. First of all, I want to say we're big fans of 1 Million Cups, and so Chad and Dev and Debbie, all you guys, we're grateful that you guys are doing what you do, and so we feel privileged to be able to share today. Shucks, he says. My name is Dan Sewell. That guy is Chris W. Allen, unlike his Twitter handle, which would suggest his name is Chris Wallen. Just want to make sure everybody's aware. And so we're here to present, we are 2 members of a team that are actively creating an application called Gracious right here in the eFactory. So what is Gracious? Gracious is an app specifically designed for pastors to help them plan, prepare, and present their sermons each week. After a while, then, after usage, you will have for yourself a personal sermon note library in the cloud. So it's a cloud-based service and an accompanying iOS application. So where did we get the idea? So I got this idea after years of being around guys who are creating sermons and realizing they all have a disjointed workflow, to say the least. So one particular example is my dad, actually, who was a teacher for a long time and then for about a decade was a pastor of his local church. His sermon library was, and he's, for a guy in his 60s, is pretty tech savvy, but he ended up having a collection of Word documents that followed a naming convention that he set up in a single folder on a hard drive. So not to mention the fact that he's one corrupted hard drive away from losing a decade worth of work. There's no way for him to search and figure out what the last time he spoke on marriage or Matthew 5, anything like that. There's no organization to it being under sermon series. He has no idea when he preached these messages. They're just in a location. So that's one of many different examples that I've seen over the years. But anyway, all that to say, I looked at this and there wasn't necessarily an aha moment where I thought, I need to do this. It's more like a lifelong series of what the heck, that's ridiculous moments where I felt like I needed to do something about it. So I, in my own time, built an application for this. So to cover more about the opportunity we're trying to solve for, let's go over some basics. Who is a pastor? It's easy to say a pastor is the guy who speaks on Sunday morning. But in reality, a pastor then is essentially the CEO of their business. The business happens to be a church, except they're even more busy than a CEO because they have a lot of additional responsibilities, including 10 to 30 hours worth of preparation time each week for their sermon. So then, what is a sermon? And I know maybe a long time since you slept through a sermon, so a sermon then is nothing more than just a proclamation of truth. So that could be oratory, it could be written, it could be a blog post, any number of things. So for our sake, how do we capture a sermon? That's a lot more than just a note then. It could be a series of notes, it could be a bulletin insert, it could be the presentation slides, it could be the audio and the video associated with that sermon. So that's what we want to help facilitate, the capturing of a sermon library for each individual pastor.
So looking at the current solutions people are using, he talked about the disjointed workflow, and this is something that we assumed was a problem, and then the farther we got into user research and user testing, we found that that was true. Even in small pastoral teams of 3 to 4 people, they were all using a different set of tools, and they were using them all in a different way. And a lot of the ones we saw were Evernote, Google Docs, and then the always exciting emailing yourself a Word document. It's 2015 people, and then paper. So here's a little bit about the opportunity that we saw. We saw over 300,000 churches in the United States that fit our criteria, and inside that we have preaching pastors, we have associate pastors, and then we have teachers. And our service and software is applicable to all of them. Then some more exciting opportunities, we see our church planners, missionaries, and evangelists. And one of the ones I'm really excited about is seminary students. These are people who are already early adopters of hardware and software, and so giving them an app in beta to let them test for free is not that big of a deal. They're going to be okay with it. And we do have 251 accredited schools here in the States and Canada, and these aren't weird places in some hobo's basement. These are actually accredited institutions where you can get a master's.
They can use our software too.
They can. We'd be happy to charge them. But these are places that are accredited. You can get a real diploma that is honored and recognized, and that they produce over 80,000 students.
So sometime last year, by trade, I'm a web developer. I built a web application, and I didn't know what to do with it. I hadn't heard of the E-Factory, never been down here, so I met with a friend who happened to be a partner of a lab here, Verve Lab, actually. I just wanted advice. What would you do next with this? And they said, well, I'd partner with me. So we did. We partnered, and so we found we had a common passion for a couple things. 2, an individual on the team. They've been around ministries, seen the arduous process that is sermon creation, and knew there was a problem worth solving here. And then, of course, for entrepreneurial pursuit, share that as well.
All right, a brief history of where we've been, where we are now, and where we're going. So we have an MVP that we've launched, and through that process, we have streamlined the sermon creation process from inception all the way to presentation on your mobile device. We've also been able to add pastor-centric features to give us a competitive advantage over other note-taking devices. And this is one of the things that I think is our biggest differentiating factor is that you're able to right-click and insert scripture references in your preferred Bible format. So you don't have to Alt-Tab out and bring up a bunch of other windows. We are entirely cloud-based, so it doesn't matter what device you're on or where you're at, you're going to be able to get your stuff. We've added sermon organization, And that is for your current stuff and your old stuff. So if a pastor wants to import part of his old library and have it there readily available for him to search and use as reference for new projects, it's there ready to go. And also one of the unique things we know about sermons is they're not just random presentations. They're going to be given on a specific date, and that could be a recurring sermon or it could be happening at other times. And we've added a calendar organization feature to our software that we believe really helps set us apart. We're also able to add, and Dan touched on this earlier, some other files, audio, video, images. If there's other notes you want to add, you're going to be able to pull those formats in. And we've made the notes searchable, so unlike this crazy pile of Word docs, you can actually go back and find something you're looking for. So what's next through our UX improvements? We're working on onboarding. It's not enough for me to just get you to sign up for our email list. I have to actually be able to get you into the software and using it comfortably. So that's one of the things we're working through right now. So I'm sure anybody who's launched a software offering knows. Sermon scheduling, we're continuing to work on that and help that come to fruition so it can be better useful for pastors. And then note editing. And we've done a lot of testing, and we've done some really targeted focus groups. And one of the things that kept coming up over and over again was the ability to edit notes. So we're going to continue to add that to our service features. So what's next? This is the last part. We want to grow our early adopter base. We already do have a lot of people in the software giving us a lot of good feedback. Sometimes that's hard to take, but that's how you make great stuff. The people we're wanting to target are seminary students, church planners, associate pastors, and denominational outreach. And we'll talk about denominational outreach again in a minute.
So for me, this is the exciting part. I mean, we have the minimum viable product. We're going to do another iteration with some UX improvements. And after that is where it gets really cool for me. There's going to be, we want to add some embedded study helps, not just those scripture references and that tagging stuff that we're doing right now. And then, again, it goes public, and this is where it's interesting to me, not just where pastors can mentor each other and share sermons with each other, but for me, as an individual user, I would be able to log in and see the content that they want to share. So every Monday morning, I could log in and see new content that was uploaded the day before and listen to that on my drive to work or whatever. So that's where we feel like we'll get that much more adoption as they see public content being consumed by users like us.
So what we need are connections. We want to grow our early adopter base, and we think one of the ways we can do that quickly is through seminaries and large church organizations. And we also want to grow partnerships, and we think this is one of the exciting ways that we can get Gracious into as many people's hands as fast as possible, and that's with partnerships with Christian publishing companies, partnerships with denominations, and partnerships with church planting networks. And that last bullet point is more, because we are willing to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah.
So it's time for questions.
User experience, man. Figure it out.
The pastor often, goes beyond scripture and is pulling from popular culture and is pulling a clip from a TV show or a movie or quoting from a book. In your process, do you help point a pastor to pop culture references that they might weave into their sermon, one, and two, do you warn them that they are using things unlike the Bible that is in the public domain that may not be in the public domain, and there might be rights issues?
Right. So to this point, no. I mean, it's pretty much an open-ended. You can put whatever you want in your note, and we're not liable for that. So that we're covered in that way. But for things like scripture references, that sort of thing, we're actively talking to the publishers of those that aren't public domain and getting our T's crossed in that way.
But if you know of a good database that has every pop culture reference, we'd love to pull it into the application.
For free?
Yeah, that'd be super if we could get that public domain.
Hello, I'm George Fuller with Ichthus, and what I wanted to ask was, can you go back to your minimal viable products slide?
Yeah.
Okay, so what? One more.
Going.
There it is. So what we see here is searchable notes, and what you haven't talked about, you probably already think about it, was shareable. So I'd love to see on Facebook or Twitter something that says this was shared through Gracious.
Yeah.
That way, people like myself that want to listen to a sermon can go on there and access Gracious itself. So is there a way to post the sermon through Gracious to let the congregation go to it and access it? And secondly, One thing I see audio files. Does that specifically mean adding audio files, or can a pastor say, I have a like a recorder type thing, and they can record a note and
So
access it later?
There's a lot to go over on that one. So there's one of the features we would love to add with our iPad app in particular. So if you're a youth pastor and you may not have the infrastructure to record your sermons, to be able to record straight from the device. So you're looking at your note and recording it, and it uploads it then. So to answer your question, for those that do have the infrastructure, then yes, later they can upload their audio. It's forever associated with that sermon. You could upload multiple audio files. You determine which ones you want to make public, make available to the general public. And the idea is later on we can create dynamic RSS feeds to feed podcasts straight from whatever you want to share. And once we make it public, then it kind of can go crazy. Yes, you can then as a user determine which pastors you want to listen to on a continual basis. And yes, we would track back to where they got the content to begin with so they can continue to search new stuff.
And you asked some really good questions, and one of the things that we try to be really intentional about is staying as closely as we can to the lean startup method. And one of the things that we're trying to run towards is getting an MVP that we can charge for as fast as possible. And we think that the core that we've got here is something that we can present, and we feel like that's backed up by every person we talk to saying, yes, that's awesome, we love the offering, and it hits the price point we think it should. But the features you talked about are definitely something that we're going to be adding, but we just have to hit those right points in the roadmap.
All right, secondly, once you hit your MVP and your UX, once you go to the next steps, have you thought about white labeling it for anybody in the world that wants to do public speaking? Because I see this as a public speaking type application for it, even TED Talks or anything like that. So
That's an incredibly, incredibly good question. And believe me, we have sat in meeting rooms, and I don't want to say thought about it, what this looks like, and if we should silo it or move to different verticals for our product. And we actually think that niching your product is incredibly strong. And so we wanted to stay in this space because, like Dan talked about, the team we have has a lot of experience working in this space personally and professionally. And so we felt like we could do a really good value add and have a really good product differentiation from our competitors.
Can I add to that too?
Go ahead.
We are truly passionate about solving this problem. And so there are applications across the board. But you're going to see embedded scripture references and stuff if you're a professor or whoever else might be a public speaker that could use this. We're trying to solve a unique problem among public speakers in that pastors have to create unique content every week. So if they were on a schedule like a professor and had to repeat the same, and they actually did repeat the same syllabus 2 or 3 times a year, they'd probably get fired. Because the idea is you are creating brand new content over a series of decades that you want to be able to, in the end, search all at once. And so while it may have application outside, we really are passionate about solving this particular problem.
Now, if you wanted to buy it for a bunch of money and then we could start working on that, I'd be fine with that. We can talk about that after.
Jennifer Simpson with Stokes Financial Strategies. I am part of an extensive network across the nation and internationally with ministers. And so what if we were to offer this to them? Is this in beta? And then also, what is available in other languages? So
What do you mean by other languages?
is this available, say, in India?
Oh, okay, in actual spoken languages.
Right.
No. But that'd be a great thing. We'd love to do that, but as I'm sure anybody who's rolled out a SaaS offering knows, there's a lot of hurdles with distribution and especially with payment. And so we'd love to cross those bridges, but we'll get there when we get there. Now, speaking to what we would get for a partnership, we would love to offer this free to your network for an extended period of time. And the thing you would get out of that would be a free resource for all of your people to use. And we wouldn't charge you anything for it, and it'd be awesome. And then at the other end, we would be able to meet with you guys, get positive feedback, and be able to produce a tool that you would find more beneficial than the one you had at the beginning.
So it's worth mentioning, yes, it's in beta, number one. Number two, I went to great lengths to specify that lead pastors are incredibly busy, so they have no time to mess with new software. And that's part of the struggle. They're busy, and we want to help them, but at the same time, we need to grow in the lean startup method. We need to grow our early adopter base, and that subset of our subset of a niche is seminary students, church planners, those sorts of things. So while we'd love to partner with a larger organization, reality is we need to get those guys men and women who are willing to put up with the kinks for free for a little bit while we continue to iterate through creating multiple MVPs potentially.
First of all, thank you. I love the product. I think we can all agree Jesus loves capitalism. This is a great product. I have a couple questions. First, what made you decide to do iOS first? And secondly, what made you decide to tailor your value proposition more towards the pastors than the actual congregation? Like, what made you come to the conclusion that you should help pastors organize rather than like reach out more to their congregation?
Good question.
So with pastors, that's the core of the problem we're trying to solve. It's just everything else that happens whenever you start uploading your content and making it available, that's all a byproduct of the core problem we're trying to solve. What's the first question? iOS. Oh, yeah. Another problem we're trying to solve is more and more pastors are preaching from their iPad, and I don't see a whole lot. We haven't gotten a lot of feedback that they really want to be able to preach from their Kindle or any other application. We're not opposed to it, but at this point, it seems pretty ubiquitous that it's iPads only from the pulpit for whatever reason.
And a little bit selfishly about product roadmap, we want to get this entrenched with pastors, and so they're using it for workflow development, and then we create value-add services on top of that for them to reach out to the congregation, and that becomes a secondary sell.
What is your competition? Is there, like among Baptists or Assemblies of God, is there already software in place for ministers in those denominations?
I start? Okay, so there's everything that helps pastors, are online study helps, local study helps, whatever that is, and then they amalgamate that together in some word processing tool. That's it. So we're trying to create a single word processing tool, basically, that embeds all those helps eventually. So we're trying to create what is the real solution. In the end, like we said before, you can get study helps from any number of places, from pop culture, from Logos or other software, but you end up pulling that into a single note in a Word document and an Evernote, whatever that is. So we're hoping to streamline that process and save your pastor a lot of time.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that we don't want to stand up here and be like, there's absolutely no actual competitor out there in the world, because there legitimately could be. But what we can say is we've never found one, and no pastor we've talked to knows about one. And so I think that shows that there's a latent market need for this.
I got two things. One, a comment, and I know you guys, since you're basically in beta, this would be more long-term, but I know a lot of pastors that I'm friends with, a lot of times they're trying to, not that they're copying other pastors, but they're trying to pull notes and ideas from other pastors. I mean, they do that all the time, and if you had some almost a more social type of aspect to this, to where they could be able to connect with other pastors, that would be really cool in the future.
Yeah.
You probably already have that on your roadmap.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you before you ask that question, but yes, that's absolutely, that was part of the collaboration piece we want to add, and it's not just collaborating between pastors. So like my pastor helps out, mentors pastors who are planting, and so that would be a great way for them to collaborate over the internet instead of through email. And then the other piece is eventually we want to add a full sermon library of historical pastors, so you could look up Spurgeon or even current pastors like Tim Keller, guys that you respect but you want to pull in their quotes, C.S. Lewis quotes, because that happens all the time with pastors. So if this were one place where you could get all of that.
Absolutely. I think your massive growth is probably going to come from that aspect. The other thing too, you guys have kind of mentioned, but not specifically. Are you planning on? Is this something you have a roadmap to monetize this, or is it more of a charitable based? Where are you coming at it from that aspect?
So the money question does come up, and our intention is to have we'll probably have a tiered pricing structure. It'll start at less than $10 a month, and we'll do it as soon as it's worth $10 a month. That's the bottom line.
But we are being really intentional about giving this to students, giving it to church planners, and giving it to missionaries. And so that's kind of the the social aspect of the business is we want to give this to people who really need the tools, and then the people who are already using another paid solution, we're going to give them a better solution for their dollar.
Chris, can you tell us a little bit, for those of you in the room that won't know, about the Lean Startup Method, MVP, right? And then could you guys tell us, if you can, about how you're going through beta and how you're going to continue to bring on users for free? Did you bootstrap it? Did you take on a capital? Are you looking for another round, possibly? Or is it a race to bring on users to finance the project?
Good stuff, a lot of stuff there.
With Lean Startup, first of all, I'm no expert, but what I do know is that you're basically doing everything in a build, measure, learn loop, where everything that you do is for the express purpose of learning, and you do everything next, you would pivot on what's next. So one foot firmly rooted in what you just learned, and then you make a new decision on what you want to learn next. So for us, we made a basic MVP, a minimum viable product that was the basic notes piece. So based on that, we learned we have a lot of the functionality. They're asking for things we already have in the application, like highlighting, and I want notes that aren't tied to a sermon. Those already exist. We just need to make it more clear to them what's going on. So we're pivoting, we're learning, we need to shore up the user experience piece. Then after that, we'll start doing other things, learning about what can happen next.
No, that's really good. I want to jump in right there. Like, that's one thing that's really kind of scary about software development. And I don't know how many of you guys have been involved in it, but I'm sure you've been involved in, at some point or seeing a business mature. And so often we, make these little babies and we think they're so great and they're so shiny and wonderful, and we find out that it's actually a turd at the end of the day because nobody wanted the dang thing. And when you're running lean and we're going to the users in the beginning, the middle, and the end of a development loop, we're able to find this sucks. And that's one of the things we found. Like, one of the groups we met with, I remember leaving the feedback sessions being super frustrated. Like, they didn't get a single freaking thing we were doing. They're so dumb. What is wrong with them? It's all in there. I don't know why they couldn't find it. But what that told us was that we had all the features, but regular people couldn't find them. And we would have went to
a super smart people.
No, but we would have, if we hadn't have been willing to sit down and take weird feedback that didn't make any sense to us, we wouldn't have been able to learn that, hey, this thing that we thought was great, it's not great. We need to fix these things. We need to make it more usable. And that's one of the things, as Devin asked us to talk about, that like running lean and getting to the immediate point that you need to get, then looking and iterating and reviewing, and then going to the next point allows you to have a significantly better product that will get you paid.
Yeah. MVP doesn't mean you're actually creating a product sometimes too. So I didn't even know I was doing it at the time. I didn't know about Lean Startup. But in reality, I started with an idea that I talked to a few guys I knew from a church planning network. Is there anything that you have that solves this need? What if I created something like that and got a thumbs up? So I learned. And then I built, and your question was about capital too. I had no money. So I built a Rails application on my MacBook. So that was step 2, was coming up with we came up with the idea of we get beta signups. So that was another MVP, and we got plenty of those. So we learned that there is a market for this, and we continue to. It wasn't until this point where we actually had something people could use. That was another MVP. But again, we keep building, keep measuring, keep learning, and in the end, no, we don't have capital. And we intentionally omitted any mention of capital from this because what we really need are the connections. We feel like the right connection that gets the vision, that understands what we're trying to do. We want to foster those first. Also, we're just heads down coding, and so we haven't thought through, we know our business plan, but we haven't written it out. And so, yeah.
And another question you had was about growth strategy. We've leveraged social significantly. So if any of you later, when we're going to ask what you should do, the first thing you should do is follow us on Twitter and like our Facebook page. And in Twitter, I made a post and I did the hashtag 1MCSGF, so if you want to find it that way, and it has a link back to our website, so you can retweet that, you can tag anyone who you think the product would be useful for, so please do that while you're listening to us continue to ramble on. Devin also asked us about growth strategy, so social's been one part of that. Also, I've been really aggressive with following up anybody who's ever interacted with us, and we've seen a lot of signups that way, just from like genuine, like mechanical me sending people a message when they follow us. And we've got some more automated social responses that I've got triggered. Also, if you're willing to work hard enough, companies put lists of all the people's emails all over the internet, and we're just going through and scraping those and then marketing the heck out of those things.
He's that guy.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm Taylor Likes right here. I'm the director of media ministries at Schweitzer United Methodist here in town.
I'm so happy to meet you.
So we already at our church we already use Planning Center to plan like the overall sermon, and then I use ProPresenter to present like the slides and everything. So how would your product work with things like that we might already be using?
magically. First of all, I do use Planning and ProPresenter at our church, and I could see multiple tie-outs, that you could share, disseminate notes. They've already got it in Planning Center. It's all organized by sermon series and dates and everything, and so there's no reason we couldn't push to them notes, push to them the presentation, push straight to ProPresenter the presentation. There's no reason we couldn't. Again, if it's down the road, one of those things we'll have to determine at some point adds value, and there's no reason we couldn't do that. I haven't, of course, opened up any conversation with either of those groups, but I'm guessing they're nice guys.
Can you elaborate on that, with the positioning of a software as a service when there's so many other softwares as a service and competition, that you guys are kind of a consolidation tool and an enhancement tool, and how building those elements of congruency with tools that people are already using are critical to the life of a startup?
Go ahead, Chris.
Great, thanks, I appreciate that. Could you elaborate for me, Chad?
So everybody already has a suite of tools that they already have themselves entrenched in the way that they're doing this. And a lot of the pastors have been doing this for years and years and years. And there's a point of conversion where you're going to have to get them to drop what they're doing and do it. But there's a transition period where your product has to fit with what they're doing now until you can do what it does better.
Yeah, see, that makes sense now. One of the things we found is that there's already people who are like willing to stand up and shout about the pain points of their traditional workflow. And that was the example we got, especially when we sit down with a small team of pastors. Every single one of them will have a different workflow. Now, it might not be the same at some larger churches where they've instituted specific software usage, but even in some of those larger churches where there's an attempt to institute software usage, it wasn't that way. But your question about consolidation, because that's the idea, is that we have to give them something that is less painful than what they're already using. But we have to make it so much so that they're willing to take that transition period. And one of the ways that we're doing that is allowing you to import whatever other note type you're using. So if you're used to using a Word document, you can import it right into Gracious. It won't have all the searchability features because it's not in our stuff. But you'll be able to.
Actually, yeah, it will.
It will have all the searchability features once it gets in there. And you will be able to tag it, and that's one of the things that we found is incredibly useful is that everybody wants to know, hey, did I do this at some other point in the past? And with Gracious, they're able to go back in about, a millisecond, find out.
So yeah, one of the cool things we already do is the scripture reference stuff. You can look up a scripture, select it, insert it straight in there, and now it's forever tagged with that scripture reference. You can just search for the last time you spoke on Matthew 5, and that's already in.
So there's been lots of different ideas that have been shared here, and I'm sure you get lots of good feedback from all your current users. But how are you staying focused on your calling in this? How are you focusing like a laser beam on the scope that you set originally, and being able to fulfill the value that you're offering to the pastors to enable them in their ministry, et cetera? So how are you staying true to that main focus that started your business?
Yeah, so I mean, we're in the middle of another build, measure, learn loop, and that's what we hope to continue to do. We just learned from a focus group that we got to do a lot of changes to get this initial piece right, the initial sermon note creation process, the core of this idea right, and then we can do everything else. So our focus is on that particular piece. The velocity with which we would solve those problems would increase if we had, endless amounts of money. But that would be it. Our focus is unchanged. Our desire to fix the problem is unchanged. It's just a matter of how fast we can get it done.
And anybody who's done client work is familiar with scope creep. It's pretty normal. Somebody agrees to pay you X amount of dollars for a website, and the next thing you know, they're asking you to redo the branding for no charge just because they think they can. And it's the same thing internally when you work on projects like this on teams. A lot of times is that you're like, oh, this is a great idea. Oh, this is a great idea. Oh, this is a great idea. And then we get in front of a user group, and like 15 of them all have a different direction that we should run. And then it's like, oh, here's these other verticals we can pursue. And so one of the things that we're trying to be really intentional about is staying laser focused on being able to provide a better solution for this one problem, and then add feature sets on top of that.
So 2 questions. First question is, how big is your development team? Is it just you two? And then the second question is, are you open to, since right now you don't have any capital, are you open to volunteer programmers to help build the application? I'm a software developer. I have a buddy in St. Louis that is actually very passionate about this. I believe he was building something similar, and he's a Ruby developer. How could he join in and help you guys?
Yeah, we're more than happy to take on any development help. That would be
So,
super.
To answer your question first, there are 2 developers. It's me and this guy that's running the camera back here, Tim.
Yeah.
His name is Tim Cook. He is the real
The
Tim
Tim Cook.
The Tim Cook. That dude from Apple has no idea who the real Tim Cook is. So it's the 2 of us. Oddly enough, he does the iOS app. He builds that. I'm kind of the Ruby guy. Yes, we would love to have anybody that shares the passion and is willing to volunteer. Of course, yes.
And
absolutely.
that's the thing is we think that there are partnership opportunities with people who want to be able to say, hey, I've got 3 hours, I've got 7 hours a week, and this would be a passion project for me. So we'd love to talk to those people. Follow us on social media, shoot us a message. I'll definitely follow back and get on our email list.
Guys, we're about a minute over, so rehash for us. How can we, as a community, help you?
We want connections. If you are connected in any way with seminaries, large churches, Christian publishers, denominations, and church planting networks, come see us or share that tweet I put up there with it. But especially one thing that we'd like to target with this room today is denominations. If anybody has any ties, it seems like everybody in town has their brother's nephew's uncle who works for AG. We'd like to have a few more connections over there to help push that ball a little bit farther down the road.
So I would say too, with connections, it's not just, that's great that we grow our relationships as well, but every connection we get, somebody's got an idea. Somebody's got something that they want to help in some way. So the more that we grow that network, it's not just this network, it's networks of developers and people with ideas of what they would like to see as a user. So yeah, talk to us.
Thank you.
Well, as you guys can see, it's always a different week at 1 Million Cups. You never know what you're going to get, whether it's a nonprofit, a local organization, an event, a new company, a new division. We welcome them all, and as half of you are entrepreneurs in this room, we ask you if you know somebody else who could benefit from coming through this platform and the community coming together to figure out what can we do for you. It's a pretty unique situation and opportunity. We'll be here every week. Check us out on social media and all that fun stuff. There's some interesting hashtags that came out today. Thanks, Damien. Turd and Jesus loves capitalism. We always learn something new at 1 Million Cups, and big shout out to Jay Handy all the way in from Madison, Wisconsin. He's with Signal Point. They have an incredible investment process that you guys should definitely check out. So we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.